I can't help but think about that family or that with that boat and stuff, and you have to think if all your hope wasn't in Jesus, if I didn't have God in an instance like that, what in the world would you depend on? What in the world would you lean on for strength and for comfort? I thank God so much that we can lean on Him and that we can look to Him for comfort, for strength, for encouragement. And God, we appreciate you so much, Lord, for all that you've done. Thank the Lord so much for the youth service on Friday, just in Bible study, whatever you call it. We had such a great spirit of the Lord there that night, and Friday night it was just such a great spirit that was moving there. This morning we're continuing on with our lessons on Christian ministries. So a few weeks ago we had the ministry of serving, and I talked a whole lot about leadership. Fast forward a couple of weeks now, and the lesson is on the ministry of leadership. I was like, well, I told Paul, I think I sent Paul a text message. I said, hey, Paul, won't you skip forward a couple of weeks and look and see what the message is? Because it seemed like sometimes I get in trouble and get in. Because I think at the beginning of this lesson, I actually got into 2 weeks' worth of lesson in one lesson and didn't bother to look forward or skip ahead in the book. At least look and see what was going on. One of these days I'll learn to do that. But I think we'll be okay this morning. The focus thought this morning, we're talking about the ministry of leadership. We'll talk again about the ministry of leadership. The focus thought this morning is God places leaders in the church. Focus verse is Deuteronomy 31:14. And the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, thy days approach that thou must die. Now, it'd be nice if God would give us a heads up when it was time to go away from here, wouldn't it? Be nice if God said, hey, Duane, in about 10 years, 2 months, 6 days, and a couple hours, you're going to go away from here. So it'd be nice if God would do that, but most of the time it's not quite like that. He said, call Joshua and present yourselves in the tabernacle of the congregation that I may give him a charge. And Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tabernacle of the congregation. Lesson text is Numbers 27:18 and 20 through 23. That's the only one I'll read, Thomas. I'm really not talking a lot about Joshua and Moses, but I'll read this anyway because it is part of the lesson text. So, and the Lord said unto Moses, Take thee Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay thine hand upon him. And set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and give him a charge in their sight. And thou shalt put some of thine honor upon him, that all the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. And he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall ask counsel for him after the judgment of Urim before the Lord. At his word shall they go out, and at his word shall they come in, both he and all the children of Israel with him, even all the congregation. And Moses did as the Lord commanded, and he took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and he laid his hands upon him and gave him a charge as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses. And you may be seated. So several years ago, it was at one of the Christmas dinners, and afterwards, the people were cleaning up and straightening up at it. Last week we was talking about on giving, the ministry of giving, and I mentioned that everything that happens here, music and everything, doesn't just happen. It doesn't just, boom, we come in and the Lord blesses everybody, and it's boom, it's just like, these things come up here, and those things are hung up by themselves, and that's hung up, and the carpet just don't get cleaned, and the grass just don't get mowed. There are people that get involved in that, people that do it. And from the lesson, again, that someone some people mows, and there's people that cleans, and there's somebody works the sound, there's people that play the music, there's people that sing, and so it goes on and on and on. People get involved in here. People give of their time. People give of themselves. They are giving of themselves to get things done for the Lord. And so that's kind of what was happening that night. They were giving of their time, and they were helping out, cleaning up everything that was going on. And so anyway, they were talking, some of them, they were talking, and I just happened to be there. And they said eventually Sister Mom and Sister Jewel is going to not want to do all the cooking that's going on there. Now, this is something that to them, to both of them, they do pretty well. I don't know if you've ever been to the Christmas dinner, but they've got a real ministry there. I don't know about you, but I am blessed by, I like that ministry, the ministry of Cooking. I like that ministry. It's a good ministry. I'm blessed by that ministry. I like partaking of that ministry. I don't have that ministry myself, you know. I would probably burn a bowl of Frosted Flakes or something, you know. That's just me. I don't have the ministry of cooking, but Sister Jewel and Sister Mom, man, they really got that going on. But just to be realistic, to be real, we know that if the Lord tarries, eventually they're not going to want to do it. Or if the Lord tarries, they may get to the point where they can't do it, or they may get to the point where they may not be here. We just have to be kind of real. We have to be kind of real with ourselves if the Lord tarries. Anybody know the hour when the Lord's coming? I don't. I'm raising my hand, kind of asking. You know, I really don't. So we don't like to think about those things, but we have to be real about these things. So they were talking about eventually Sister Mom, Sister Joel not wanting to do it, and someone's going to have to step up and take their places. Somebody is going to have to fill their shoes to do those kind of things, which when it comes to food, someone have to really be blessed to step into those shoes and take those shoes over, because I'm just going to tell you, I'm just saying, you know. But shoes are not just filled. It's just like all this happening, shoes just don't happen to get filled. Not just anyone can come out of nowhere and take someone's place when it's needed. If we have a musician that just decides out of the blue, we're going to hang it up, not just anyone can come up and take that piece of music over and take it. Now, I'll give you the pastor's view when it comes to this is your position in the church and this is what you do. He said, don't give it up, right? The pastor's words, I've heard him say, don't ever give up that position. Don't turn. That's what God's blessing is. God has given you that. That is your job. Me as the base, the pastor has said that. He said, don't let that go. There's maybe a few things I'd like to turn loose on. Don't let that go, Duane. That's yours. You keep that. And I said, all right, Pastor. With the bass, you know, I made the comment to Jonathan, and he still probably knows the date, the hour, the minute, the second. He knows exactly when it was going. Jonathan, one of these days, I'm probably going to turn the bass over to you. But in retrospect, I recanted on that statement, because the bass is mine. That's my job from God. I like playing the bass. I like doing that for God. That's my position, and I don't ever plan on giving up. So he gets mad a little bit. We let him do the choir because we needed some guys to sing, and I'll just fill in. That's, to me, I'm always that person. Just plug me in wherever you need me, and I'll go do whatever it is. I'll just do that. But so that's what I do. But when it comes to a musician, if a musician decides to give up, Brother Junior, if Sister Judy says I'm not playing the organ, you gonna get up here and play the organ? We don't want Brother Junior to play the organ. I'm just telling you, we don't want it to happen. Sister Judy, if the pastor decides he's going to give up the guitar, are you going to take it? No, she's not going to do it, because they can't do that. That's not, you don't just pick up an instrument and you just don't start playing it. Now, God being God, and God being all-powerful, and God being knowing everything, God has the ability to just lay upon you that talent of playing an instrument. But for the most part, there comes time that you have to spend in it. It has to God gives you that talent, but then you have to develop that talent. You have to work at that talent. I know I've told you the story probably a gazillion times. When I knew 3 chords. I knew D, I knew cheat G, and I knew cheat A. And Uncle Wayne, he's the one that kind of showed me those things. And so back when we didn't have this and we had the old church, Brother Wallace, it would have been sitting about right here, but it would have actually been about right there, about probably where Mandy's sitting, somewhere right there. There would have been a pew there, and Brother Wallace's guitar was sitting there, and they was playing a song, and they were playing in D. And so the music's going on, and I just feel the call of the Lord to go up there and play that guitar. And so I get up there, and I'm D and cheat G and A, and I'm just playing that thing. And, man, the crowd was just wow. Here Duane's going up on the guitar. Never seen this before. The Lord is just blessed. And look at that. Out of nowhere, here comes. Nobody knew that he had such talent on loan from God. I mean, it was just like, here it is. And well, okay, maybe not everybody was actually going wow or wild or whatever. But here I was playing the guitar until the song ended, and they changed chords. And I didn't know the next chord. They were playing in C the next time. I didn't have no idea what that was. So I put the guitar down. But then I went home, and I started practicing. 30 minutes a day, almost every day. I come home. I told y'all, I come home from school. I read the Bible for 30 minutes. I played my guitar for 30 minutes. That's what I did. And I learned all the chords, and I learned all the combinations. And then eventually when I thought I was ready, well, the rest is history. Okay, that's just a little joke, but yeah. So anyway, but you just don't step into positions, do you? You just don't step in and take over something without out of the blue without having something. You just don't step into leadership. You just don't get plugged here. You're a leader. You get plugged into leadership, and there it is. When you're stepping into leadership, into shoes of leadership, the shoes have to fit. You have to step into a pair of shoes that actually fit you. If you read the book, you'll see that in the culture connection, it spoke about follow the leader, following the leader, okay? Follow them so that when the time comes for someone to take their place, you'll be ready. To follow the leader, you got to stay right behind them. You got to stay right. You got to go where they go. You got to step where they step. You can't just take on leadership without having followed someone. You don't just learn. Leadership is just like, oh, grace from God. You're just a leader. You've got to, we talked about what was the lesson? We was talking about the learning, the ministry of teaching, I think. And I said it was the learning of the ministry of learning to teach, because you got to learn before you can even teach. Remember, Brandon can't be a gym teacher because he ain't never been to school for it. Now, he may have all the athletics and the knowledge and the personality to do it, but because he ain't never been to school for it and learned it, he can't do it. So I've got to learn to be a leader. I have to learn how to do it. If you're going to do what someone else has done, you're going to have to do what they've done. You're going to have to go where they go. You're going to have to walk what they walk. You're going to have to talk like they talk. You're going to have to do all the things that they've done. If I'm going to follow in someone else's footsteps, I'm going to have to follow in their footsteps. If I want to be like the pastor, I'm going to have to be like the pastor. If I see Junior as a businessman, I want to be successful like Junior is. Then you know what I got to do? I got to go study Junior. I've got to follow and do the things that Junior has done in order to be that successful businessman. Now, I might not be able to pull it off like he can, but I need to at least study somebody. I've got to go find it. If I'm going to walk where they walk, I've got to do what they've done. I'm going to have to go where they've gone. I'm going to have to talk like they talk. You just don't take Kim's spot writing a play because you want to write a play. Heather's not going to say, I want to write a play. I'm just going to start writing a play. I'm just going to start writing it. Because Kim gets that. It's a blessing from God. It's a ministry. It is something that God uses through her, and it speaks to people. That's her talent. That's her blessings. And you've got some big shoes to fill, figuratively, because Kim has a big foot, and literally, because spiritually because it's a big deal. You don't just step in. You just don't take over for the meal preparers unless you know how to prepare a meal. You don't just step into the pastor's role just because I think that I might be able to preach. Follow the leader. Do what he does. Then maybe one day you can do what he does. Follow the leaders. Follow the meal preparers and do what they do so that maybe one day you might be able to do what they do. Live the life. Walk the walk. Talk the talk. Because it's more than just about cooking. It's not just learning about cooking. Anybody can learn how to cook, but it's about doing something for the Lord. It's about being a servant. It ain't just about cooking. It's about serving, and I'm not talking about food. I'm not talking about serving. It's not just about playing an instrument. It's about serving. It's not just learning to write a play. It's learning to serve. It's not about learning how to preach. It's about serving. And when you do something in the church for the Lord, you are a leader. It doesn't matter whether you're mowing or whether you're cleaning or whether you're playing or whether you're teaching or preaching or helping out in the play. You step into a role of leadership. Even Paul, and Sister Donna, all the things, Sister Donna does most of the building. She gets the ideas. She's the idea person. She has to help Paul out with these things, She has to do all the design work, and then he just, he gets the glory. But Sister Donna, she's the person in the background. We pick at Brother Paul a little bit about that. So anyway, so all the building and all the stuff that they do, that puts them into a role of leadership. Now you may think, not me. Yes, you are. You are a leader. You have stepped into a role of leadership. And we all are leaders in some way. You lead your kids. You lead your grandkids. You may lead at work. We are all leaders. We all have influence on somebody in this world. You may not like it. You may not like to think about it, but you do. You might not be a supervisor. You may not be a manager at work, but if you've been there long enough, they're going to have somebody shadow you. They're going to have somebody come sit next to you and show you, how do you put that in the computer, or how do you put that screw on, or how do you fix that widget, whatever it is. But before you can teach someone, you have to have been taught. Before you can lead, you have to be led. You have to learn to lead. You have to learn to follow. You have to be a follower before you can lead. You had to have a parent. You had to have a grandparent. You had to have someone at work that you watched. Maybe they did a good job of leading you. Maybe they didn't, but you were still led. Maybe you did a good job of following. Maybe you didn't do a good job of following. But there you were still following. And if you can't be led, you'll never be a leader. If you can't be led, if you can't learn to follow, you will never, ever understand what it means to be a leader. You may think you are. You may be able to, I'm the manager, and but you'll never understand if you learn to be led. You'll never understand what it means to be a true leader. You'll never be able to understand what it really means to influence people in a positive way. It's easy to influence people in a negative way. We see that all the time. Look at the news. You can watch all that. But to actually influence people in a positive way, man, that's a talent. That's something you have to learn. While we are following, as we learn to follow, we are learning. We are learning. So a side note on some of the things I'll talk about. I'm talking about Elijah and Elisha. So I'd actually had these notes came from a message that I had prepared, and it was actually going to be the next message that I was going to preach, and it was basically talking about following the leader. If you're going to do what he does, you do what he does. And then the pastor went and got sick, or done whatever it was, and then he ended up in the hospital, and the next message I was going to preach would have been that message, and he wasn't here, and I was like, I am not going to preach a message about following in the footsteps of the leader to get ready to take over, and with the pastor not here. There is no way that is going to happen. I don't know if it was God's will for me to preach it, but I didn't preach it. And I was like, God, you'll have to give me something else, because I ain't doing that. There ain't no way. No, I might have been kicked out of here. But while Elijah was running with Jezebel, or running from Jezebel, not running with, running from, God came and talked to him while he was in the cave and told him that, I want you to go to anoint Elisha to be the next prophet in your place when you get ready to go from here. The only problem was Elisha wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a man of God. He was a farmer. When he went and found him, he was plowing. He had 12 yoke of oxen. It said he was there, and he's with the 12th one. So he was sitting there plowing in the field. So he wasn't a prophet. But Elijah finds him, and the Bible says that he lays his mantle on him, turns that, placing the mantle on over, handing over. And after this, Elisha goes back and he says, hey, man, I need to kiss mom and dad goodbye, and I'm going to feed the people. I'm going to kill one of these oxen. We're going to feed the people. And so it says that after he done all this, the Bible says that he went after Elijah. He followed after him, and he ministered to him. He served Elijah. Elisha, the next man in line, followed Elijah and ministered to him, served him. He didn't think, well, I'm the man. When you get out of here, I'm the man. I don't have to follow. I don't have to serve you. You've already put the mantle on me. It's my job. Watch out for me. Now, my Bible, the timeline that shows that when Elisha started following Elijah up until when he actually took over, it was about 10 years is what it showed. We hear very little about them. You don't hear nothing about them, as a matter of fact. You hear a little bit about Elisha where he's some dealings with or Elijah, but you don't hear anything about them together until you get to 2 Kings chapter 2. Bring up 2 Kings chapter 2, 1 through 6. And it came to pass when the Lord would take Elijah into the heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said unto Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Bethel. And Elisha said unto him, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they went down to Bethel, they together. And the sons of the prophets that were at Bethel came forth to Elisha and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? Ain't that nice to know again? To get ready, Elisha's getting ready to be taken up by the Lord. It'd be nice again, just kind of like Moses and Joshua. It'd be nice to know when the God was going to take us out here. And he said, yea, I know it, but hold your peace. Just hang on just a minute. And Elijah said unto him, Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Jericho. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, again he says, I will not leave thee. So they came to Jericho. And the sons of the prophets that were at Jericho came to Elisha and said to him, knowest thou not that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he answered, yea, I know it. Hold ye your peace. And Elijah said to him, tarry, I pray thee here, for the Lord has sent me to Jordan. And he said, as the Lord liveth and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And they too went on. Elijah knew that the time that Elisha was getting ready to be taken out of here was soon, but he didn't. He wanted to learn. He wanted to glean as much information from Elijah as he could. He didn't want to leave him. Everywhere that he went, he wanted to go. Even after 10 years of learning, even after 10 years of following, even after being 10 years as being the number 2 man, he still didn't feel like he knew enough. He still didn't feel like he was ready. I want to be around him every second of every moment. If he goes to Bethel, I'm going. If he goes to Jericho, I'm going. If he goes down to Jordan, I'm going. They go to Gilgal, and Elijah said, stay here. Elisha said, nope, I'm following you. I'm going in your footsteps. Elijah took Elisha down to Bethel, and the prophets were there. Told him, said, hey, your master's getting ready to leave. He said, I know. Just hang on. Just hold on a minute. Just leave. In other words, he said, hold your peace. Leave me be. Stay away from me. I think that he was probably beginning to try to come to grips with what was going on here. He's sitting there saying, hold your peace. Leave me alone. I know it's getting ready to happen. I got to process this stuff in my mind. I'm getting ready to lose my master, the guy that I've been following for 10 years. I got to process this within myself and kind of figure this thing out. Bethel was the first place they went. What did Bethel mean? It was the house of God. It meant the house of God, the house of prayer. Elisha followed Elijah to church. He followed him off. If you want to be a good leader to your kids, you want to be a good leader to a spouse, you want to be a good leader to anybody else, let them know the importance of being faithful to the house of God. Let them know the importance of making sure that I'm hearing the preached word of God. You want to be a good leader? Lead them to church. Lead them to the house of God. Tell them how much it means to be faithful. Make sure that you are teaching them and make sure that they are learning, I need to be here. I got to do here. Even if I have to rearrange my schedule, even if, Larry J, you got to work any more Sundays? What'd you tell him? He told him, I ain't working no more Sundays. And you know what? God provided. God made a way. God's blessed him so much with being a good seller, number 1 seller. God made him the head and not the tail. And he's always said, I got a little influence now. God gives us a little bit of influence when we need to. So they went on to Jericho. They did the exact same thing. Told the sons of the prophets there, yeah, I know the Lord's coming. He's going to be taking him, but just hold your peace. I'm trying to process this. Jericho is where God delivered the enemy into Israel. Remember, he tore down the walls. Without a fight, Israel didn't even have to fight. They won the victory, and they learned to be able to trust in God and depend on him. You want to be a good leader to your kids? You want to be a good leader to your spouse or anyone else? Show them some past victories from God. Take them to some places where God has been a healer. Take them to some places where God has been a provider. Take them to places where God has given strength. Take them to talk to them about the Lord. Show them, say, this is where God, if it wasn't you, maybe it was somebody in the church. Remember Brother Clarence and remember Brother Steve and remember when the pastor or when the Brother Junior or Sister Mary or whoever else it had to be. Won't you take them to those places? Let me show you what God has done. Show them, make God real to them. Teach them, show them, let them follow you into those places where God is real. Make God come to life to them. Make him real. Let them see what God is able to do. Rehearse those things in their ear. Make sure you're teaching them and they're learning how the wonders of God. They go from Jericho all the way down to the River Jordan. Elijah hits the water with his mantle. The water splits and they go walk out on dry land. When they reach the other side, because Elisha had been so faithful with Elijah, he had followed him, and because he had done that, Elijah wanted to do something for him. Bring up 2 Kings 2:9. And it came to pass when they were gone over that Elijah said unto Elisha, ask what I shall do for thee before I be taken away from thee. And Elisha said, I pray thee, I want double what you got. I want double. You got 1 million? I want 2 million. You got the Spirit of God? I want double the Spirit of God. You did 11 miracles? I want to do 22 miracles. I want to do double what you got. I want to have as much. I have followed you all this time. I've been faithful. Here's what I want from God. Jordan River is where Israel made the final crossing over into the Promised Land. It's where they put Egypt the world behind them. And they finally walked into the promises of God. If you want to be a good leader to your kids, you want to be a good leader to your spouse, you want to be a good leader to anybody else there, show them what putting the world behind you does. Show them what getting Egypt in behind you and doing away with the world. And it takes you into the promises of God. It takes you into the blessings of God. It takes you to be where God wants you to be. Show them that. Let them follow. He says, son, daughter, husband, wife, people who my workers, my fellow co-workers. Watch me. This is what happens when I put separation in between me and the world, and I get closer to God, and I get into the promises of God, and watch the blessings of God. I'll win fights that I don't have to fight, and I'll take land that I don't have to fight for, and I'll eat of gardens I don't have to plant. Just watch me. Watch me when I get the world a little bit further behind me. Watch me when I cross over Jordan and I put the world finally behind me. Elisha followed Elijah over the river. He put the world behind him. He stepped over into the promises of God. He stepped over into his new life. He stepped over into a place of miracles because he did. If you'll follow the miracles that were in the Bible, Elisha done twice the miracles that Elisha done. He gave him the double portion that he asked for because he was so faithful in learning to follow that he followed in the footsteps of his leader, that he followed in behind him. And when he done, God blessed him. God gave him. Now, can you imagine you Elijah and Elisha sitting there and I'm following, Pastor, I know you got 2 Chevelles, so I want 4. The pastor's like, whoa, wait there. That'd be a pretty tough little thing to try to come across. But Elijah said, if you're with me when I go, if you're following behind me, if you're still with me when I get out of here, you're going to get it. You're going to be blessed. If you follow with me, if you're following the leader, if you're following in the footsteps, and your feet can fit the shoes, God's going to bless you. Do what Elijah, he said, you do what Elijah, you do what I done, you'll be doing what I did, but you'll be getting the double portion. He's not here this morning, but I stayed on Johnny Lee about practicing on the bass because he didn't like to practice that much. I stayed on him because I knew how I learned. I knew what it took for me to learn how to play the bass or learn to play the guitar. When Darren left, he had been playing the bass, so I don't know if I'd ever played the bass. I can't remember ever playing it. We just happened to Brother Jerry brought one here somehow or another. We just happened to have one. Darren started playing it, and he bought one, and I guess it just happened. I don't ever remember. I guess it's just getting old and you don't remember how things happen. But I went back to what I'd done with the guitar. I practiced. I went home. I put headphones on. And I learned music, and I just sat there and played and played and played. I did what I knew what worked. I experienced it, and I knew that it worked, and I knew it could work for Jonathan. I said, Jonathan, if you'll just follow my footsteps, if you'll just practice, you'll get better. You may not think that you're all that good right now. If you'll just follow in my footprints, for someone to follow in Sister Mom and Sister Jules' footprints, they're going to have to learn how to cook. They're going to have to learn not just cook for a family. They're going to have to cook for 100 people, 120 people, 150 people. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to will you have to do things exactly the way they do? No. But there's going to have to be some time and some effort and some things put into it to be able to do it. You just can't go to KFC, pick up a bucket of chicken and set it up here on the table and us expect, well, that's the same thing at Mama Jewel. That's pretty good. No, it ain't like that. That's not the way this works. That's not the way any of this works. Whoever does it, they're going to have to learn to follow a little bit. They're going to have to learn to step in there. Same goes for Sunday school teachers. Same goes with elders. The same goes with musicians. The same thing goes with a pastor. You're going to have to follow a little bit. You're going to have to do a little bit. I'm going to have to follow in their footsteps. If I'm going to do the exact same thing that they done, if I'm going to be like Elisha, following Elijah, I'm going to have to do the exact same thing. If Jonathan, he's going to have to do the same thing. He's going to have to practice. It just doesn't happen. If time goes on, we're going to need people to step into positions. I'm not done. I see. You think about, 10 years ago, the Lord was coming back, 15 years ago. And I believe God is coming back. I believe wholeheartedly. But I also know that we don't know when. Paul preached as if God was coming back then. That was Paul. And we've done the same thing. And I know. Now, God may come back for me tomorrow. God may come back for me in about 1 minute. You don't ever know. And then God's got me, and that's the end of that. But we don't ever know when the Lord's coming back for us as a congregation. So we've got to be prepared. And if you want to fill somebody's shoes, you're going to have to be able to fill the shoes. You're going to have to be able to get your feet in there, and they're going to have to be the right size, and they're going to have to fit just the way, again, you may not walk the exact same way. You may not prepare. You may not play the exact same way. I don't preach like the pastor does. I preach a little bit different. We do things different. Brother Thomas and Johnny Lee, when they teach, they don't teach exactly the way I do. Jonathan doesn't play the bass nowhere near as good as I do. I hope you're listening to this, Jonathan. I'm just kidding. Y'all don't ever take me serious on that stuff, but it is true. But I'm just saying. Josh doesn't play the drums the same way Brandon does. That's just, but thank God that we got people that can step in. It's so comforting to know that Jonathan may be down, or if I go down, that we got people that are able to step in because of our leader, the way he's taught us. The Sunday school teachers are just the same. They're different. They're going to teach different than what other ones. But if they want to be as successful as their predecessor, they're going to have some work to do. It's about serving. Again, leadership is just simply all about serving. It's more than just me. It's more than just you. Teaching your kids is about, if you're leading your kids, it's about their life, and it's not about your life. You see these parents that live their lives through their kids, they're ruining their kids. Teach your kids to be them. Teach them to have their walk. Teach them to grow up and to learn their way. Don't live your life through your kids. When they, it's just crazy the things that they do, because they look at all this. Oh, I missed out on all this when I was a kid and stuff, and I'm going to throw it all on my kid. If you push a kid somewhere in college or whatever, it's not going to work. I could have pushed Heather and Nicholas into. Okay, so I went to accounting and I hated it. But I'll just tell you how that happened. So when I graduated, Dad's like saying, "Son, you ought to be an accountant." Those people, because I guess he'd been around some there was somebody, maybe it was Lucky's or somebody's accountant, whatever. I don't know who it was, but those guys make a lot of money. I liked accounting in high school, so there we go. I'm going to do it. So I go into accounting. After about 2 years, I hated it. I'm not that person that sits by that everything has to equal zero at the end of the day. I don't care. It's more of a sales. I don't care how I get there as long as I get there. I could care less if I'm not a rule follower sometimes. If I need to get here, if I need to sell Junior this and this and all this stuff's in the way, I want to go as far around as I can so I can take care of Junior. I want to make sure he gets his thing that he needs, and I make my money, whatever it is. But I don't even know how I got off on that. But teaching your kids about yourself, or teaching them, you got to teach your kids, allow them to life. Teach others. It's more about teaching your kids. It's more than just you. It's about their life. Teaching others is more about their lives. It's not about your life. You are passing the mantle on to somebody else, but you're not passing your life on to them. I can't stand it, in these sports stars you see when a quarterback, they draft another quarterback, and it's the one that's going to eventually take their place, and they don't want nothing to do with them. I ain't hanging out with him. I'm not going to show him nothing. That's ego is what that is. That's all ego, because it's not about you. It's about the team. Because what if you go down as the star quarterback and he's got to come in and lead you to victory? I want 2 great drum players. I want 3 good bass players, guitar players. We need preachers and teachers, and we need as many as we can, because we're a team, and it ain't about my ego. It's about the team. I don't care how great Jonathan gets. I want him to be better than me. He's still not taking over, but hey, I don't care if he's better than me, because it's the team that when I go down. We're going through 1 Corinthians for our Bible studies in youth service, and Paul had tackled some really difficult subjects. And he was talking about sin that was going on. He was talking about, hey, man, it's best that a man don't touch a woman. He was talking about it's better not to be married than it is married, because if you're married, you got to please that person. But if you're not married, you get to please just the Lord. That's the only thing you got to think about. And so Paul told them that this was his advice and not really by commandment of the Lord. And he said, I speak this of your own profit. I speak this to profit you. Okay? He said, I speak it to you. He said, I decided to talk about such a difficult subject for your benefit. I would probably rather talk about the blessings of God and getting closer to God and miracles and healing and how deep. But you know what? This is something that's I put aside with things that I want to teach, and I want to teach that what edifies the church. I want to teach something that's on your behalf. It's not about Paul. It wasn't about him. It was about the church. It's about the team. You have to see ministry, no matter what kind of ministry it is, as serving the body. As if I am a servant of the Lord, I am your servant. That's what I do. I've said many times, Pastor, how much do you get paid for this? How much fame and glory? How many times has your name and picture been on the front page of the newspaper saying, pastor of Wilderness Lighthouse, fame and glory? You don't see it. What's your salary, annual salary? I don't remember. That's where it comes to zero. That's right. But you were called of God, and you're following God, and He's leading us. And He does it for us. All the decisions and all the times He has to pray, and some of the hardest decisions is whether you decide to have church in bad weather or not to have church. And He always thinks of who? Us. Because if it was Him, it's easy for Him to get to church. It's really easy. He's got four-wheel drive. He's drove that. It's easy for me to get to church. But when He does it, He thinks of us. And that's the thing you always have to remember. Whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, it's always in your best interest. It's always that with the best interest in mind. So He's a servant to us. All those hours, all those times I spent practicing on the bass and guitar. You know how many record deals I've signed? None. You know how much money I've made for playing? None. But that's not why I did it. I felt the pull from God. I wanted to do it whatever I could for God. That's why I do it. I want to do it for the church. When we went to one service and I saw the pastor was preaching and teaching, it was wearing him out all in one day. What did I tell you, Pastor? Did you come tell me, Duane, I want you to teach? I come and asked him, Pastor, you want me to teach? Because I said, I'm His servant. I'm a servant to you guys, but as much as I am a servant to God and I'm a servant to you, I'm a servant to Him. And I say, Pastor, how can I help you? I've told him before, Pastor, if you want a weekend off, you let me know, I'll preach. Anytime that he wants to take a break. Now, he doesn't do it, but if he ever wants it, it's there because I want to serve Him. As much as I serve God, as much as I serve you, He's part of the body, and I serve my pastor. And plug me in, Pastor. Tell me where you want me to go. Tell me what you want to do. I don't care. I don't care if you need me to clean toilets. I'll clean toilets. I don't care if you need me to go up underneath the church and clean up all the spider webs. I've never cleaned them up, but I have been under there. And I've come out with a lot of them on me. Thomas has too. I'll do whatever, God. I'll do whatever, Pastor. And that's all God is looking for. He's looking for people that are willing. That's all God cares about. You may say, well, I can't, I don't know how, I don't have skill, I can't do that. But God can give you skill. God can give you knowledge as long as you have the desire to do. I would rather have an employee that had the desire to do than had all the skill and the knowledge and didn't want to do. Give me the person that wants to do, and I can teach them, and I can give them skill, and I can give them knowledge. But I can't make somebody want to do. I can try to make somebody want to do, but I can't make them. When God was calling Saul to be king, Samuel gave him a sign that God was going to show him that he was the one. He said that the Spirit of the Lord will come upon thee, and thou shalt prophesy with them, and shall be turned into another man. Bring up 1 Samuel 10 and 9. And it was so that when he had turned his back to go from Samuel, God gave him another heart. God changed Saul right then and there. God can make you into what He wants you to be as long as you want to be. As long as you're willing to say, God, whatever it is that you want me to do, God, I'll do it. As long as you're willing. There's going to be tests. There's going to be trials on the way. Saul experienced those. Unfortunately, he failed. But God has to see that you have the goods. That's why we have tests and trials. Brother Charlie used to say, do they have the goods? God wants to see, do you have the goods? If you're applying for a job as a welder, they hand you the stick and stick you out there to go weld? No. They give you a test. I would hope to goodness they give you a test. I don't want to drive the car if you never welded before and you weld on my car. I don't want to go to a surgeon that's never practiced on something. Oh, you're the first person I've ever cut on. I've never used a scalpel before, but I'm going to try it on you. I don't want that surgeon. I want the man that's had lots of practice. I want the man that's cut on some maybe not live. I want them to cut some alive people too, not just the dead ones. I want them to try a little bit on it. And that's our physical stakes. That's our physical selves. How much do you think that God wants a person that's in charge of leading people with their souls at stake? How much do you think God expects of them? Of somebody that's actually leading? God wants somebody that has the ability to do it. God's not going to call someone that He doesn't think that can't do the job. There's way too much at stake here. To be a pastor, to be some type of leader, whatever. There's souls at stake. God's souls, God's people, the people that He came and He bled for. There's way too much at stake. And He'll not allow somebody to stay on that job unless He has a man for the job. Like Saul, if God couldn't trust him, God took him out. Don't worry about it. because it's way too important to God. But the book says God loves everyone equally, but he doesn't trust everyone equally. God loves us all, but he don't trust us all. That's why he gives some people things and some people don't. He couldn't move Saul out until he had a David. Until David showed up. David was anointed king way before he ever took over. But he didn't take over because he wasn't ready. So he had to go through the tests. He had to go through the trials. He had to take on Goliath. He had to remain. You know what? David remained faithful to Saul even though Saul wanted to kill him. Even though he was tossing javelins at him, David remained faithful to him. He was on the run from his life, from his life for Saul. And he had the opportunity to take Saul's life. And you know what? David said, I am not going to do it. I am not. Saul, I had a chance to take your life, but I will not do it. But I'm not going to touch God's anointed. I am not going to touch my anointed, nor do my prophets no harm. He said, I am not going to touch him. I am going, Saul, I love you. I'm your son-in-law, Saul. And he allowed God to do it. But the one thing that David never did, he never quit. He never gave up. He remained faithful to Saul. He remained faithful to God. And that's one thing a leader can't be, is they can't be a quitter. I worked in a place, and there was a person there, and they was the operations manager, and they quit at the drop of a dime. Every time something didn't go their way, they quit. And then they go back, oh, come back to work, we need you. And I'm like, are y'all ridiculous? I don't want no quitter working for me. I don't want to work for a quitter. Oh, come back. Well, eventually they quit one too many times, and the next time they came back, they had a boss that they hated. Talk about irony. A leader has to be faithful. They have to be faithful. And David was faithful to Saul, even though Saul wanted him dead. Elisha followed Elijah everywhere he went up until the point he died. He was faithful. God saw that faithfulness in him, and God knew that he could trust them. The leader's got to be trustworthy too. Would you want somebody taking care of the money in the church, or whatever it is, taking care of the money in the church that was a thief? Pastor, would you put somebody in there that was in trouble for embezzlement? Oh, I didn't know. Sorry. I go back to that story where Darren was at Walmart buying something, and the price came up way too low. And Darren argued with the cashier, this is not right. That price is way too low. It should be more than this. See how much money I got in my pocket? This is what I've prepared to spend. Oh, she argued, and Darren said, go get your manager. Bring him out here. I want to talk to him. And finally showed the manager, and he said, man, thank you. I don't know how many of these things went out at that price. You think you can trust that person? I think I trust that person. I believe God, that's somebody that God can trust. A leader, I'm going to leave us on this one right here. We've got a little bit more. The kids are back there. A leader's got to be a person of the people too. He's got to be a person of the people. They have to be able to connect with people. I want to bring up a video here of George Bush. Take this video, and I want you to run it to about 45 seconds. And right when he says, I think citizens is where we want to turn it off. This is right after 9/11.
I want you all to know, you can't go any louder. I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens.
There. So you hear this. This is the speech right after 9/11. He's giving it there at the spot. A little context to this speech. George had just been, or President Bush had just been to a church and had been given a speech here at the church. So he said, we're on bended knees. We're with you. We're doing it. But if you notice something with George, you hear the people behind him. You don't hear them with him, do you? And if you listen to him, he's struggling with this speech. He's having a hard time. Because that speech was actually prepared for a church. It wasn't prepared to be out here and amongst all these people. Now back that thing up to about 40 seconds. And turn it up just a little bit and run it to 47 seconds.
Mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens.
Listen real close. Stop it. So if you listen to it in the background, you can hear, George, we can't hear you. George, we can't hear you. George, we can't hear you. And this, back it up just a hair bit because you started into where I wanted you. 1 second. This is where this turns from a speech of the president just giving a speech. This is where he turns into a leader. He connects with the people. Bring up the next one. Again, these are people. Stop it just a second real quick. This is people, they're sitting there yelling, George, we can't hear you. George, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Now hit it.
I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people...
This is all off the cuff. Every bit of this is off the cuff.
And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
This turned from a canned speech until he was just doing it. But you know why? Because he connected with the people. He was able to connect with the people. I know that went a little bit long, but God has a purpose for us. God didn't save you to sit on the bench. God has a reason He wants you in the fight, but you have to be the one that figures it out. You have to be the one to fulfill it. God will give you the tools, but you need to learn to follow Him, and then you have to learn. By following Him, you'll learn to lead, Pastor.
Praise the Lord. Give God a big hand. God is so good to us.